greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends. And so that's the sacrificial part. Oh, the Lord has called us friends. Notice what verse 14 says. You are my friends if you do whatever I command you. There's this friendship that comes in the walking with the Lord in his command, and we're abiding in his love. In fact, Jesus said that in verse 50, no longer do I call you servants, for a servant does not know what his master is doing. But I have called you friends. For all things that I have known from the Father I have made known to you. Jesus talks about this friendship that comes between two people that are just intimately connected. And the first thing that happens is there's a sacrificial act on the part of one friend to lay down his life for another. We've all seen situations like this where there's somebody that's very down and out. Strung out, making a bunch of terrible life decisions. And a friend comes by and rescues. Like, come live with me and my family. You have no job, no place to live. You're making terrible life choices, and you have no idea even how to live. And so why don't you just come right in here, and we'll sacrifice, we'll lay down our life, we'll clear out a room, you live with us, you come to work with me, you just live with me, and then your life will start getting better. And you know what happens for this individual in that type of situation is that so often, as long as that person's in that house doing what his friend has called him to do, that there's now a renewed blessing and joy and purpose of life. They're waking up early, they're going to work, they're enjoying family dinner, they're going to bed on time, they're not strung out, they're not wasting their money, and it's like they're connected into that house and with that friend. And was it a self-sacrificial thing that friend did? Yeah, because if you're ever going to step out for a brother or a cousin like that, I mean, it's like, it can be pretty hard. Bring this guy into my family and we're going to do it, you know. And lay down my life for him. And then there's this blessing that comes. As long as that person abides in that way of living and can experience the joy that comes from that kind of living. And it's just the same way with us and the Lord. And we know that the Lord has loved us. He's proven his love, and that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Jesus died in our place when we were strung out and cast out and living, and he brings us in. And his love for us is sacrificial. No greater love than somebody to lay down his life for his friends. And Jesus died in order that we would have life. He died to rescue us from our death and our sin. He rose again to give us life. And then it's a sacrificial love, but it's a reciprocal love. And you know what happens when the Lord comes into my life and changes me? There, for the Christian, is a natural desire to share that love with others. To do for others as the Lord has done for me. When I was saved, I had, just to let you know some of the madness of it. I grew up in a Christian home, single parent home. My mom led me to the Lord. Thank the Lord for my mom. Her first generation Christian. But in high school, in the public high school, and college, and my deep sinfulness, I just went away from the Lord. I've been pulled over drunk 6 times, or smashed my car, one way or the other. Been to jail by the time I was 21 years old. I mean, I thought I was going to die drinking and driving, or kill somebody drinking and driving. And I was just horrifically afraid. Couldn't break away from my sin. I remember crying out to the Lord one night, like, Lord, if you could save me, I just need you to do the whole thing. Like, I need you to forgive my sin and help me, like, follow you and walk with you. And the Lord came in and he just completely saved me. It was just over one weekend, changed, transformed. I went from being drunk or high almost every night of the week to never again at all. Just like that. The Lord saved me. Then I realized I had this desire to rescue other people after I got saved. And I remember forking out cash, getting people jobs, and finding like the worst of worst, and just like, And then I realized I couldn't save anybody. Like there were so many times I just got used and abused in that process, and the people would go right back into it. Because only the Lord can really save and change and transform a heart. But still, to this day, I have this desire for sinners. I love sinners. And I've never had anybody ever come into my office and confess any sin to me that I'm like, yeah, I've done that 10 times as bad. But it's just like I just know this, that the Lord forgives sinners. And He transforms hearts and lives. And that's what I believe that's just the heart that God has given us. When we've been forgiven, whoever's forgiven much, the same loves much. And we desire to extend grace to others. That's why Christians evangelize. It's why we share the gospel. It's because we've been saved by the love of the Lord, and we want others to be saved by Him as well. And so 1 John 3:16 says, by this we know love, because He laid down His life for us. We also ought to lay down our lives for the brethren. And now this very self-sacrificial way of living becomes like this way of like, hey, I want others just to know the same love that I've experienced. And we want to lay down our lives for others as the Lord has laid down His life for us. The most loving thing sometimes that we can do for people around us is just obey the Lord's commands. Did you know that? If you're a dad, one of the best things you can do in order to love your kids is just follow the Lord's commands. Just be faithful yourself. If you're a mom and a wife, one of the best things you can do to love your husband and love your kids is just to be faithful to the Lord's commands. 1 John 5:2, John said, by this we know that we love the children of God, when we love God and keep His commandments. We love people when we love God and keep His commands. It's a reciprocal love. And there's a friendship that we have with the Lord that way. Just like living in the Lord's house, it's a friendship that we have with Him. He doesn't call us servants any longer. He's called us friends. And it doesn't mean that we are not servants, as Paul, after the Lord writing this, and of course Paul was very much aware that the Lord had said this, would call himself a doulos, a slave of the Lord. I'm Paul, a bondservant of God. It's okay to call yourself a bondservant of God. We do recognize that we're slaves of sin, now we're slaves of righteousness. But there's many analogies in Scripture. And so we're called sheep, we're also called athletes, we're called warriors, we're called slaves. But in this regard, we're just simply called friends. And think about the Lord's love for you, that you're a friend of God today, that He has loved you, and He saved you, redeemed you, and it's so that you would abide in His house as a friend who's given His life for you, laid it down and made this wonderful place for you to live in here. Well, so His love for us is a sacrificial love. It then becomes a reciprocal love. But then lastly today, we would recognize that the Lord's love for us is it's an unconditional love. And then it's also a continual love. And it's here in verse 15, and if the whole portion of chapter 15 up until this point has been abiding to bear fruit, this becomes a soul-soothing verse for us, where the Lord said, you did not choose me, but I chose you. That's unconditional. The Lord chose us independently. And then He said, and I appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should remain, and that whatever you ask the Father in my name, He may give you. I don't know about you, but I had a terrible start and was rescued from the Lord, as I just mentioned to you. And I just want to finish well. Like, I just want to bear fruit. But I'm still the same sinner that I was in so many ways. The Lord saved me and transformed me, but I realize I can self-destruct. And I'm like, Lord, what's going to keep me in your house? Maybe you can relate. And I'm thankful that the one who chose me unconditionally has also made promises to keep me unconditionally. And if He loved me then, He loved me now. And if He rescued me from me then, He can rescue me from me now. Oh, I need Him to. I don't know if you can relate. He said, you did not choose me, I chose you. I chose you. The selection was mine. It was unconditional. In fact, you only chose me because I chose you. And I chose you so that you would go and bear fruit. Not that you would go and wither away, but that you would bear fruit and that your fruit would remain. So the Lord has loved us unconditionally, and He's promised to love us continually. And that's why we remain right there. God's choosing is sovereign. Jeremiah 1:5. Before I formed you, I knew you. Before you were born, I sanctified you. I ordained you to be a prophet to the nations. Long before you had done anything good or anything evil, the Lord said to Jeremiah, I chose you. I formed you. Now I sanctified you. I knew you. The Lord chooses sinners. Remember when He had called Peter, Andrew, James, and John, 4 fishermen, after that great catch of fish. Remember after that great catch of fish, Jesus said, come and follow me. But when the boats were filled with the fish and they were sinking, Simon Peter, Luke 5:8 said, Simon Peter saw it and he fell down on his knees and he said, depart from me, I'm a sinful man, O Lord. And so did John and the sons of Zebedee, who were partners with him, with him and Simon, and James and John said the same. But remember what Jesus then said. Jesus said to Simon, do not be afraid. From now on you'll catch men. It was almost that Peter said to the Lord, you have the wrong guy. You've called me to follow you, but I'm a sinful man. And the Lord says, don't worry about that. I'll take care of that part. You follow me. Later on, Peter would show his own sinfulness and deny the Lord. You know that. And then the Lord would restore him with what? With what? A great catch of fish again. Almost to remind Peter, like, I didn't choose you because of anything. You were a sinner then and you're a sinner now. And then He just says, Simon, if you love me, feed my sheep and abide in my love. The Lord's choosing is based on His love for us. The Lord's choosing is based on His love for us. And we know that for Israel, the Lord says, I didn't choose Israel because they were greater than any other nation. But He said, and then He even said this, I did not set my love on you because you were greater than any other nation, but I set my love on you because I loved you. Like, I love you because I love you, and that's for no other reason. You never earned it. And it's the same for the New Testament church and our sovereign choosing before our God. Ephesians 1:4 says, just as He chose us in Him before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy and without blame before Him in what? In love. Abiding in His love. His love for us. He laid down His life for us while we were still sinners. Hey, the Lord's rescued you and brought you into His house. His way of living is best. His commands are best. It's how we experience His love. By doing what He does. And He says, I've brought you into this place that you would remain in this place. His choosing causes us to dwell, remain, and be satisfied. Psalm 65:8. Blessed is the man you choose, O God. Cause to approach you like reeling a fish into the boat, that He may dwell. And that word dwell is abide, remain, stay, live. The Lord chooses, causes us to approach Him so that we would dwell there, live there, in His courts. And when we live in His courts, we are satisfied with the goodness of His house. His house. In His house, the way things function and the rules that are set up for those that live there. There's no better place to dwell. There's no better place to live than to live in the Lord's love and to abide in His house. And it's there that we'll bear fruit, and our fruit will remain. And then the Lord said, and whatever you ask the Father in my name, he will give you. And it's here that as we're living in the house, we have this freedom to pray. We can ask for his help, and we can ask for his strength. And quite possibly, what our prayer needs to be today, and maybe what your prayer needs to be today, is, Lord, help me to abide. And cause me to bear fruit. Save me from me. You don't let me go running out. Lock the doors tonight, Lord. Keep me right in here, that I would abide in you and bear fruit in your name. And then the Lord circles back to what he said in verse 12, in the final verse today. And he said, these things I command you, that you love one another. So the outworking of loving the Lord is loving his people, loving one another, extending grace to them. And if the Lord's love for us is a rescuing and a transforming love, love others with that. Rescue people. Let your love for them transform their lives. Show them mercy and grace and help them along the way. If the Lord's love for us is a sacrificial love, then lay down your lives for the brethren. If it's a reciprocal love others the way that he's loved us. And if it's an unconditional love and a continual love, and you're going to love others with that love, that means you don't love somebody because they're lovely or when they're acting lovely. That you love them no matter what, and you don't give up on them because they falter and they fail. And so if you're going to love others the way that the Lord has loved you, continue to show love, continue to show grace to those people in your life so that they might know the love of God for them. God bless you guys. Thanks for being here with us today. Lord, thank you for your word.